Namaste and good evening, everyone. Today we are going to discuss chapter 12. Chapter 12 is Bhakti Yoga. We have seen Karma Yoga in the first 6 chapters, starting from the challenges faced by Arjuna to supreme motivations of karma that drive our yajnat, samarpana, prasada, bhavas, the attitudes that shape our aptitudes of creativity, productivity, enrichment, and dexterity, which is based on knowledge projection and the knowledge deficits, that is sattva, rajas, and tamogunas, driving us our creativity, productivity, and enrichment that help us to build our mental aptitude, fortitude of discrimination and dispassion, and to reach a state of flow, which is basically the first 6 chapters of the Karma Yoga. And then we discussed about the nature of the essential nature of every one of us, which is the self, the Atman, whose characteristics are universality, sustainability, and imperishability, and infiniteness. So that is for us to develop the faith in the power of the self within. All of us need to actually initially have that kind of a faith within the self, the power of the self that is illuminating our mind and intellect and every cell in our body. Thereafter, case studies were shown, vibhudis, and then we discussed the holistic perspective of the self empowering us, but we will definitely face both situations of extreme ends, sorrows, happiness, failures, defeats, etc. All this is empowered by the self, and the power of the self can change the mind to face up to the situations. And then in the 12th chapter, we are now going to enter into a discussion about the self, the devotion to the self, which is called as inspiration, the highest form of devotion. That is the inspiration, inspired by the power of the self, instead of inspired by motivations of the intellect and the mind and the body, pressures. To be inspired by the power of the self is called as inspiration. And that is the extreme form of devotion. And that is basically what is discussed here in this 12th chapter. We finished, we completed the 11th chapter, looking at how the infinite is the Vishwam, he whose manifestations is the whole universe of forms, the Virat Purusha, the whole cosmos of gross forms, in his own expression, the Virat Purusha, which we actually all we worship as Vishnu. Viveshti, Vyapnodi is Vishnu. That which pervades everything is Vishnu. That which pervades everything is what is called as Vishnu. That is the term Vishnu signifying. And that is the self, the within us, the self within us is that which pervades everything. Therefore, it is Vishnu. And that Vishnu actually guides us through the 4, through our Dharma, Artha, Kama, Mokshas, through various controls, and those controls are signified by the Shanga Chakra Gada Padma. That is basically where we stopped. That infinite that is actually pervading every one of us. The conch sounds us out, conscience as the conscience, the wheel as the time that protects us and gives us experiences, the maze that is the power of the force within us which forbids you to do wrong. And the lotus is the blessings of the wisdom of intelligence that helps us to actually understand and then move forward. So this is where we stood, and now we are going to enter the discussions on chapter 12. So I thought this is one of the smallest chapters in the Bhagavad-Gita, as well as 15th, which we will be discussing a bit 2 or 3 weeks later. So this the chapter Bhakti Yoga summarizes everything that the Karma Yoga summarizes everything that the inspiration of the self stands for. So that karma and its attitudes, aptitudes, and your motivations, supreme motivations, with the faith of the self as infinite, imperishable, and universal, is basically the powers that combine together to create the power of devotion within us. Therefore, it is a very important chapter. And that chapter, it is very cryptic, very small. So we will actually also chant this. I will play the audio. All people who can follow it or have the book with us, can chant along with it. It will take only 5 minutes. And so we will chant the whole of this chapter, and then we will enter into the discussions.
अथ भक्तियोगो नाम 12 अर्जुन उवाच एवं सततयुक्ता ये भक्तास्त्वां पर्युपासते ये चाप्यक्षरमव्यक्तं तेषां के योगवित्तमाः। श्रीभगवानुवाच मय्यावेश्य मनो ये मां नित्ययुक्ता उपासते श्रद्धया परयोपेताः ते मे युक्ततमा मताः। ये त्वक्षरमनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कूटस्थमचलं ध्रुवं सन्नियम्येन्द्रियग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धयः ते प्राप्नुवन्ति मामेव सर्वभूतहिते रताः। क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते। ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम् मय्येव मन आधत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवसिष्यसि मय्येव अत ऊर्ध्वं न संशयः। अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततो मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय अभ्यासेऽप्यसमर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि कुर्वन् सिद्धिमवाप्स्यसि। अथैतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुं मद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यतात्मवान्। श्रेयो हि ज्ञानमभ्यासात् ज्ञानाध्यानं विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागः त्यागाच्चान्तिरनन्तरम्। अद्वेष्टा सर्वभूतानां मैत्रः करुण एव च निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः समदुःखः सुखः क्षमी सन्तुष्टः सततं योगी यतात्मा दृढनिश्चयः मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिः यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः। यस्मान्नो द्विजते लोको लोकान्नो द्विजते च यः हर्षामर्षभयोद्वेगैः मुक्तो यः स च मे प्रियः। अनपेक्षः शुचिर्दक्ष उदासीनो गतव्यथः सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः। यो न हृष्यति न द्वेष्टि न शोचति न काङ्क्षति शुभाशुभपरित्यागी भक्तिमान् यः स मे प्रियः। समः शत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जितः तुल्यनिन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतस्थिरमतिः भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः ये तु धर्म्यामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपासते श्रद्दधाना मत्परमा भक्तास्तेतीव मे प्रियाः इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे भक्तियोगो नाम द्वादशोऽध्यायः।
So that is the 12th chapter. We are going to look at the reflections on this. So we will get started with the question of what is devotion. Every one of us know what devotion is. I mean, we have a perception about what devotion is. And if you look at the dictionary also, we will get various kinds of definitions: profound dedication, attachment to a cause, or from a religious angle, religious observance or worship. But if you look at these 20 verses of the Bhagavad-Gita, you can see that it is a very comprehensive definition of bhakti and its characteristics that is reflected in this chapter. It is a complete process of the intellect and the mind, leading to a manifestation of a set of supreme characteristics of your own character, of one's personality. And that is basically the multidimensional definition of bhakti that is given in 12th chapter in 20 verses. It enunciates the structure of devotion, the process of devotion, and the result of devotion. We will see these three things, three characteristics of devotion. So if you look at the bhakti that is defined in the Upanishads and through all these chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita, it is about breaking your thought patterns which are negative. Negative in the sense that, limiting thought factors which gives your own identity as your own mind, intellect, and the body. Break free of that. That is one of the aspects of bhakti. You need to think that each one of us need to think that we are above the intellect, the mind, and the body. Something even beyond the intellect. We need to get inspired by this fact, and that inspiration is bhakti, which results in a positive behavior of limitlessness that transcends our perceived, deficiencies of intellect, mind, and the body. So how do we actually manifest this is basically what we need to worry about. And the Gita, Bhagavad-Gita, is about this, manifesting this characteristics of your own self, to break free of your limitations and getting inspired. And also to inspire others. Three things: getting inspired and inspiring positive behavior, not only in yourself, but in the people and in the surroundings around you. So this is basically what the Bhagavad-Gita is about. 3 steps are defined. That is the 3 R's of the manifestation. 3 R's. 1 R, reduction. The second R is refinement. And the third R is redirection. So reducing the thoughts, negative thoughts, distracting thoughts within our mind. So if we keep on, every mind is a flow of thoughts. And at any instant in time, you have lots of thoughts actually, creating a kind of movement within your mind and a flux within your mind. We have to keep reducing that. We have to focus our mind to what is really required in your belief initially about the self, and then to unleash the power of the self, to reduce this Physiparas tendencies within our mind is the first step. How do you do that? That is through karma yoga, through actions. You need to do things. Even if you are distracted, keep doing, striving to do what you really want to do. have the goal and then move towards it, work towards it. That is why Karma Yoga was defined or described in the first section from chapter 1 to 6. So chapter 1 to 6 can be considered as the reduction process, where the mind is now focused, is getting focused into what is the goal and to go towards that goal. Second is the refinement process. The process that helps you to actually modify and reshape the balance of thoughts, assigning value to your goals and your intentions, and generating a magnetic desire to actually be, deriving the happiness of the self from within. That refinement process, therefore, is the bhakti process. And that bhakti is described in the second section, which is from chapter 7 to chapter 12. Chapter 12 is the epitome of all this, which defines this bhakti in as a summary, the refinement process. And thereafter, after reducing and then refining the existing thoughts, you are ready for the next level of raising yourself up to infinitude. That is jnanam, the knowledge, the redirection process, really to direct you to the target. Process that gives inspired direction through establishing a purpose towards a legacy, to understand what the self is, and to get a detailed analytical picture about this self, and to get a grip on the sattva rajas tamo gunas, so that you can actually establish the sattvic tendencies within you. That is the chapter 13 next week onwards to chapter 18. So the 3 R's of manifestation, reduction, refinement, and redirection, is the process to actually be a bhakta. And that now we are going to look at that. So in the we let us take a look at the perspective in which we have been looking at this. Krishna talks to Arjuna through this almost 600 plus slogas, and he mentions about, he actually refers to himself as Mayi, on to me, with me, etc. Maya, Mam, Aham, Me, Mata. So to me, by me, Mam, me, Aham, I, me, Me, to me, and Mata, I consider, I consider. So several terms, several slogas, you can see these terms repeatedly coming up. My Sri Bhagavan-Uvaja, second chapter, in this verse itself, Maya Veshyamano Emam Maya, etc. Referring to himself. So all these referring to yourself, to the self as Krishna himself, he is a perspective that is looked at in duality, where you are looking at you and Krishna, Arjuna and Krishna, as 2 different personalities. So Krishna as a personal God is what people look at. That is the general way in which every one of us look at the concept of Krishna, as a duality, Dvaita, in the Dvaita form, the personal God form. So personal God form is a very easy mechanism to attach to the highest level of the infinite self. In the non-dual perspective, the Advaita perspective, that supreme self, that personal God is the supreme self within us. Everywhere it is the self infinite, and it is everywhere universal, infinite, imperishable. And therefore you cannot actually divide it. So each one of us sitting here and thinking that the self is inside me separately is mistakenly thinking so. It cannot be divided. Infinite cannot be divided. It is everywhere. So I am also part of that. That supreme self, non-dual perspective of the self. Advaita perspective is basically what we have been focusing on. So Mayi means on the self, to self, or with the self. Maya means by the self. Mam means the self. Aham, the self. Me, or me means to self, to the self. And Mataha, the self considers. So that is the non-dual perspective. So if we actually start looking at the non-dual perspective and try to understand these, each verse and its meaning, then you will start seeing the self within you and as your own empowering entity. And therefore, your mind, intellect, and the senses can actually start looking at the self with total devotion. when we really start looking at the Advaita perspective of identifying yourself with that infinity. That is basically how self-analytics or the Swamgidam has been looking at things. And basically I've been keeping it very consistent to that kind of a perspective without mixing up duality. Therefore, I'm sure those of you who are looking at the dualistic perspective may pardon me, because I have been actually trying to make sure that we do not deviate from that one singular perspective of non-dualistic or Advaitic identity with the self, Advaitic identity with the self. So if every one of us is the same, is that divine message. Now, if you look at this personal God as well as the Supreme Self as infinite, two ways. One is the personal God, immediately you are actually looking at that power as a concrete, physical, and as manifested in some form. We give some form, name and form, and we have characteristics built around it. So concrete, it is concrete, physical, and manifest. And it is manifested within you. So it is easy for you to perceive. And that is actually the philosophy of the Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism. Later on, that religious aspect of Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, we have multiple gods and forms. And we give, we have temples, we have idols and idol worship, and all those things came about because it is very easy for the human mind to get focused into that. So concrete, physical, and manifested representation of the infinite, unmanifested. Unmanifested, it is difficult to conceive for most people. It is swift and easy to actually get focused there. But on the Supreme Self belief of the Supreme Self as infinite self, it is abstract because it is everywhere and you cannot see it. You cannot perceive it. You can only perceive it through your own mind and intellect. And when your mind and intellect start reflecting the value systems of the joys of the self, and therefore reflected as yajna, tyaga, samarpana, prasada bhavas, and then your thought processes becoming Kshatriyas, Shudras, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, which is about creative productivity, enrichment, etc. Then powered by this shunning of likes and dislikes, the fortitude of equanimity, then we actually start seeing how the self is exhibiting the characteristics of the self that we see in the symbolized, manifested form of personal God. We can actually start seeing within ourselves, shining from within us. And that shining of this infinitude from within us is, it is very, it is difficult for people to, unless and until you consistently and persistently focus in every action of yours towards that. It is exceedingly difficult. Doesn't mean that you need to give up. Krishna himself classifies this, one as swift and easy and the other as exceedingly difficult. But ultimately, what Krishna talks about is that you need to focus, whether you are going through the personal God route or whether you are going through the Supreme Self as the abstract and then going towards your own identity as Advaita. In whatever case it is, you need to focus your mind on that and practice and persist with what you want to do, with that faith. Giving priority to that with faith and engaging in selfless action is what is recommended by Krishna. And this is basically what a devotee, a bhakta, is supposed to do, either through this duality process or through the non-duality process. Ultimately, focusing your mind, teasing and persisting with your belief and faith in the self, giving it the top priority and engaging in selfless action without looking at the results of what you are going to get. In which case, you are going to come up with, your mind is going to get refined to that level where it will exhibit tremendous amount of power which can be unleashed in your thoughts and actions. And it is listed out as about 32 characteristics of the mind that can be developed. These 32 characteristics of the mind are described in this chapter from verse 13 to verse 19. So that is actually in one page a summary of the Bhagavad-Gita, Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga. One page. If you look at the screen now, which is there, it is the one-page description of what Bhakti Yoga is. different way, the multiple different ways in which you can actually connect with the self. But practically, what you should do is listed on the right side: focus, practice, and persist. Prioritize with faith and be selfless. That's all. In 4 words, you can summarize the process of bhakti. And then 32 characteristics of the bhakta will actually start reflecting from within you, which we will take a look at towards the end. So it is about the power of the self, infinite. That's why I have shown dotted lines, a cloud, which means it is everywhere. The power of the self everywhere. You cannot escape it. Your body, mind, and intellect is embedded within it. So we are all powered by that self. And that power of the self, how can you manifest this power of the self? We have the unmanifested self, which can be manifested through a process of faith and confidence in it. So, through a process of inspiration. And that is how you manifest the self. Filtering out your distractions, giving high value tagging it with the joys of the inner self as your ultimate objective motivation. Having a mindset of abundance, positivity, and growth. Having a magnetic desire to actually touch with that joys of the self. It is not only about value setting, value tagging, but about having a magnetic desire to actually use those values to effect in the outside world with fortitude and patience. And that is how you manifest the self. And that is when your bhakta characteristics are going to come out. That is the process of bhakti. This process of bhakti is what we are going to discuss. So it is about the mind stuff. It is about how you refine the mind. Bhakti is about refining the mind. There is this formful stuff, which is, I'll talk about that in terms of applied bhakti yoga. Formful self is how the self expresses in the manifested world, in the outside world. How, looking at the infinite self empowering us, how do you actually manifest yourself? You manifest yourself by your thinking, thought processes, and your actions in the world. The thought processes creating actions in the world. The ability for you to think and act is called as a competency. And there are several set of competencies that you can develop. So the competencies that you already have are the power of the formful self. The self that is manifested as your capabilities. Capabilities to touch with the self, doing good, and skill sets and the knowledge, etc., that you actually use in the daily world. So that is the formful self. Your mind has got these developed, and those characteristics of the mind which are developed exhibit as thinking, thought power, and that thought power translates into actions in the world. So you have this articulation, thinking, articulation, and expression. The A, U, and Ma, thinking, articulation, and expression, A, U, Ma, of the power of the self through each one of us, through each one of you. And in fact, every one of us has this, the formful step. Now look at the other things, the things that you do not have, the powers, the knowledge that you do not possess, the capabilities and skill sets that you do not have. All of this are in the infinite. It is only that your mind has not yet tapped that. And when you say that it is in the infinite, it is also within you. Because it is infinite. It is everywhere. The infinite possesses everything. So it is also within you. But your mind has not yet tapped it. So that which you have not yet tapped is the formless part of yourself. It is abstract. It is not yet manifested. We need to manifest that. So you need to put your mind's effort into acquiring new skills and knowledge, which will then become your manifested capabilities first, and then you start expressing it. This is how things goes on. So this is how at age 10, you had a lot of formless stuff, a self, and some formful self. And at age 30, you have changed. You have made a lot of those formless self into your formful self. And you are manifesting much more knowledge, much more skill sets, much more competencies. So this is how this translation occurs. So the formless self is getting manifested through you, and that becomes the formful self. The abstract becomes the concrete. This is the process. Every day this is happening. Every day the abstract is now getting translated into the concrete, the physical. So worshipping the formless self implies being focused, self-controlled, and balanced in the pursuit of acquiring new capabilities. The yoga part of it. With the motivations to employ this in a selfless manner, in a creative, productive, and uplifting manner. This is basically yoga. What is yoga, therefore? The most fundamental definition of yoga. When we talk about yoga, normally we get carried away to the physical, aspects of yoga, the practices, the body, and its character, and the asanas, and etc. All those things. But that is not the yoga that Upanishads talk about, the Bhagavad-Gita stresses about. It is about worshipping the formless self. That's the powers, the infinite powers that all of us have, but we have not yet realized. Being focused, worshipping those powers, and being focused, self-controlled, and balanced in our approach, pursuit of those goals in competence. So anything that you do with focus, self-control, and balance of mind to acquire new capabilities is yoga. And that, okay, when we actually talk about yoga, when we actually do that with the supreme motivation of satisfying the inner self, not the pleasures of the body, the selfish. It is not about selfish goals. It is about the selfless goals, to employ these in selfless manner, in a creative, productive, and uplifting manner. That is when you become a yogi. That is yoga. I'm sure all of you would have now got a gist of what exactly this yoga is, the generalized yoga is. And once you do this and the yoga, you get united with the infinite, meaning your current state of mind, which does not have certain capabilities, get united with those capabilities that you are striving for. That means your infinitude, that aspect of the infinitude is now manifested within you. You capture it through the process of yoga. Then worshipping the form, then worshipping that, meaning doing sadhagam, practicing, etc., of the knowledge and skill sets that you have manifested, you have learned, acquired through yoga. You now worship, meaning you actually start developing that through focus and dedication, and employing those in a selfless manner, expressing it in selfless manner by being creative, productive, and uplifting. That is Chem. That is actually translating that into the action plane, so that it becomes meaningful to not just yourself, but for others connected to you, others influenced by you, etc. That is Kshema. So yoga and Kshema. This is what in the 9th chapter Krishna talked about. Ananyas chindayando mam e janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamiyaham. Without undiluted or with undiluted focus. If you are able to focus purely on me, my ananyas chindayando mam, on the self, me, then that is you are completely focused on doing good or achieving higher goals or being motivated by that joys of the inner self. If you are doing that, ananyas chindayando mam tesham ejanaha paryupasate, whoever does that, then for them that self, the power of the self, will definitely make sure that it will carry your yoga and Kshema, acquisition of new capabilities or enhancement of existing capabilities will be taken care. That is the promise that Bhagavad-Gita gives us through 9:22, 9th chapter, 22nd verse, the central piece, which we discussed a couple of weeks back. So this yoga and Kshema is about the formless self getting, the unmanifested formless self getting manifested as the formful self within us. That which is everywhere, is now within your grasp, in your mind, and then trying, and is going to be expressed, articulated and expressed through you. That is the process of bhakti. This is what we are talking about. So Arjuna's query, it starts with the first words. Arjuna is asking Krishna, who is better versed in yoga in general? The one who worships the self in constant devotion with form, that is formful self, or the ones who worship self in the formless. Now, just look at it in the practical sense. What is Krishna saying? Krishna saying, who is good, better? Somebody has acquired some knowledge, let us say, at the age of 25, he gets out, through that process of initial learning processes, and then starts doing good to the society, completely, focusing on that job, on whatever he knows, and then trying to help others and trying to uplift society, doing good to the society. Keep on doing that. He's doing excellent. There is another person who actually, even though he or she has acquired knowledge, he is bent upon, yoga again, and then trying to get new skills and knowledge, and then, or creating knowledge, etc., and then serving society. So, which is okay in a very modern perspective, you can call about as a scientist and somebody who's a scientist, who is inventing new knowledge and then trying to create more knowledge and serve society. The other one, existing knowledge, using it and then trying to help others. Who is good is basically what Arjuna's question is in a practical sense. So the answer is, if somebody were to ask you this question, your answer would also be along the lines of what Krishna told. That is basically what we are going to hear. So one who focuses on working his skills and focus, or one who pursues new avenues with dedication, who is better? That is Arjuna's query. That who is better inspired by the self? That is the question being answered here. So let us look at it. The unmanifested self-competencies becomes the mind's competencies through a process of raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and accountability. This is the process through which you can actually manifest the unmanifested competencies. It is a difficult process. The difficult meaning, we have to focus on it. We have to work through it. Raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and accountability is the process through which you can actually manifest the unmanifested. So your potentials that are already within you, productive potential, the devas, everyone has got all this infinitude is our nature. Therefore, anything and everything is possible, and it is lying embedded within each one of us. Those are the potentials, not yet realized. The productive potentials. Through austerities and practice, you can make it the acquired expertise. You can manifest an expertise. Becoming aware of, for that, what is required is become aware of what you want and set a goal. This is the practical perspective, unleashing the infinitude, unleashing the spark of infinitude from within. If not everything can be unleashed at one go, so you actually milk it and then you unleash it. How do you do that? Become aware of what you want and set a goal. First of all, you have to actually know what is your objective, what is your goal, and then you have to set a goal. Pay attention and requirements to achieve the goal. You have to pay attention to what is required to be done to achieve that goal. Raised awareness and focused attention. Then deliberate practice. Keep striving, practice to attain that goal. Striving to attain that goal. The third step. Deliberate practice. And then finally, you have to keep on measuring your progress, whether you have achieved it or not. It is not, don't leave it to anyone else. Set the accountability to yourself, then that is the best way to succeed. Set accountability to yourself. This is basically the procedure that Krishna just will now describe. So I'm just initially giving you a summary as a practical thing that we can take away in everyday life of ours. In anything that you are doing, you can, this is applicable. In fact, the message of bhakti is not just about spiritual and religious practices. It is about something that you can apply in everyday life, in living. And that is the beauty of the wisdom of Bhagavad-Gita. It is actually not telling you for a specific purpose to set certain set of people who are religiously oriented and towards a spiritual path. It is the message of wisdom to every one of us. Whatever field of expertise and endeavor that you are engaged in, you can just simply map this complete wisdom onto that field, that endeavor, or your process and your path, and you will see that it is the best, what you call, path to excellence. So that is what I'm summarizing here. So it's about, on the left side, I have shown blue color, light blue color for the unmanifested competencies because it is infinite. My unmanifested competencies are infinite. That is the belief that I need to have. I have infinite competencies within me, which I have not yet realized. And on the right side, I have a brownish rectangle here, which sort of manifested competencies, which is a very limited set of capabilities from the infinite unmanifested capabilities that I have. The power of the self is there for me to just exploit, tap, because it is everywhere. And I am fortunate enough to be enlivened by it. Every one of us should think that way. The infinite everywhere. I am the infinite. And my mind is fortunate enough to be enlivened by it. So, but the mind has to now decide whether I want to tap that infinitude or simply keep quiet. It is left to each one of us, our minds. So the latent or inherent or unmanifested competencies can be actually made into your manifested competencies through a process of focus and dedication, control and equanimity. The mind's characteristics required for success. If you do that, it will reflect in you as developed mind's capabilities, and which through focus and mere focus and dedication will become articulated competencies in the outside world. This is the process. Okay, now, so the power to create and the power to nourish, these are the two powers. The first belief that we should have is the Ishvara, the God or infinite within me can express only in two forms, yoga and kshema. The power to create and the power to enhance or nourish. This is what I have, these two powers. Put that to use through your mind. That's what Krishna says. And when you do that, what is happening is, and I'm now trying to connect it to our modern knowledge also, the power to nourish. How do you actually express in the outside world, articulate in the outside world? This is the process of perfection, process of learning. The process of learning and the process of perfecting something. That is how the power to nourish ultimately comes about within our mind. And the yoga process of power to create is expressing through the power to retrain ourselves, learning new things, learning a new skill. So perfecting and automating a skill, brushing upon our skills. And the third is learning a new skill. These are the three powers. Ultimately then manifested in the outside world, it exhibits like that. The power of the self, which is abstract, infinite, which we cannot conceive, will become the power to create and power to nourish within your mind. And then it articulates in the outside world as the power of perfecting and automating a skill, and the power of brushing upon our skills, and the power of learning a new skill. That's it. This is the translation process of the self, the infinite as our capabilities and our skill set. And this is supported. And for this, God created us with a tool, the brain, with one singular functionality, which is called as neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity was given three functions: myelination, synaptic connections, and neurogenesis. And you can see that the expression and articulation of the power of the self in the outside world is aided by these three processes of myelination, synaptic connections, and neurogenesis. It is as simple as that. It is the very simplest of all processes that nature has created for all of us. God has designed for us. Simple things. Of course, how it is implemented inside, if you go to myelination, synaptic conversion, neurogenesis, that's the science behind each one of them. We don't have to really know about that. We only need to know that there are 3 powers that we have been given, the brain has been given, and it's that we will be able to do yoga and jhana. That's it. And for that, what is required? The discipline and the structure and the process, etc., is what Krishna is going to describe. Next. So, and then, of course, the unmanifested competencies can, there is the 4th one, which is about this neurogenesis. The description of neurogenesis, the 3rd one, sorry. Neurogenesis is a process where, new neurons are created through a process of, how that neurogenesis works. A new neuron being created in the brain, especially during childhood, youth, up to 20 years of age, and even beyond also it happens. That is what the new sciences come up with. We are, each one of us, even at 50 years of age, 60 years of age, or 70 years of age, is capable of actually generating neurons in our brain to learn new things and then actually connect with the infinitude. Through a process, that process takes 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to actually become, a survived, a really healthy neuron that can do something. It takes about 4 weeks. So what does that imply to us? It implies to us as that don't give up. If you want to learn new things, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days is not enough. 4 weeks, consistently practicing something, you will start succeeding. It takes that much, almost a month for us to create new neurons. Just look at the children, our children, youth, teenagers. If you want to make changes in them, it needs persistence and consistency for at least 3 to 4 weeks for new things, for new behavioral changes, habits to be formed. We have to be persistent. Teachers have to be, persistent and patient. Individuals, if I am a teenager, I need to be patient and persistent to actually start succeeding. So this is a process. It takes time. Because we are entrapped in the physical frame of the human body, the brain, the mind, the body, cells and muscles and all those things, they need time to make changes. It is not instantaneous. The processes can be implemented. And therefore, this articulation requires patience and persistence. That is why consistency, persistence, and patience are essential tools for man-making, mind-making, mind-shaping, or man-making. So we talked about, in 30, 40 years, 50 years back, when we were talking about Bhagavad-Gita, we know that, we have, Swami Chinmayananda talking about man-making as a process, Bhagavad-Gita's aim as man-making. That was the central theme of Swami Chinmayananda's Bhagavad-Gita Jnana Yajnas. So man-making. So now in the 21st century, we know how man-making is made possible through mind-shaping. Probably the knowledge of mind-shaping was limited 30, 40 years back or 50 years back. Now we have tremendous amount of research going on, and we know what mind-shaping is. A lot of things. So that mind shaping is actually being aided by Bhagavad Gita is basically what I am trying to illustrate here. And the Gitacharyas, Veda Vyasa is talking about processes that actually make changes in your brain. And in those terms of focus, dedication, self-control, equanimity, etc., unmanifested competencies becoming manifested competencies through processes. And we know how that makes changes in the brain and to create competencies within us. Okay, so that is a brief introduction to the neuroscience behind it. We will go ahead because neuroscience is not the central focus here, but I had promised that I will be connecting these things. So this is the process of bhakti that we have been talking about. If you look at this, that is the next, the competencies. What are the competencies that Karma Yoga teaches us? We have been looking at this in the first chapters 1 to 6. What are the competencies of what you call as Gita perspective? The competencies is to have, the competencies to be shaped through a sense of higher level purpose. The competencies to be shaped by a higher motivations, higher set of motivations, and by faith in the self. So now this is what we have been looking at in detail in Karma Yoga. The purpose, of course, is to shape knowledge deficits, etc. That is sattva, rajas, tamo gunas. The higher purpose is to actually be connected with sattvic tendencies. That is what Gita is teaching us, sattvic tendencies. We can actually do all these processes to create and wreak havoc in this world. That's negative things. We can do that. That is not what Gita is talking about. Gita is talking about a higher level purpose of going through wisdom, of the knowledge of what you call as joys of the inner self. And which we actually defined ultimately in the practical world as your happiness for quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. QPA. For a simple abbreviation, I will call it as QPA. Quality. Doing things with quality, doing things that are of utility to others, doing it precisely and doing it accurately. This is it. Ultimately, whatever you do, if you know Bhagavad-Gita and if you have connected with Bhagavad-Gita, all your thoughts and actions will be geared by QPA, quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. And that is what the happiness for doing this, the happiness that you derive by doing things with quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. And if you are always motivated by that for a higher purpose, then that is when you are actually in rapport with the infinitude of coexistence and expansion. The choice of the self. That is inspiration. That in that state, the mind in that state, the happiness of that state is called as inspiration. So you should always be thinking about anticipating, acquiring, and enjoying. Always this choice of the self is your awareness and your focus. The mind like that. Raising your awareness about this is basically what inspiration is all about. The first step of having this higher purpose and connecting with the joys of the self. And through deliberate practice, practicing quality, utility, precision, and accuracy, always through practice. You keep on doing that. Today you did something with a particular quality. Tomorrow when you do it, don't be satisfied with the same quality. Try to get into a better state. Keep on doing that. Keep on doing that. Utility. You help 10 people today. Tomorrow you should be able to help at least 12 people, 15 people, or whatever. Increase it. Keep on increasing the utility value of your action, thoughts, and actions. Be precise. I mean, the sense, don't do it just for the sake of doing it, but do it so that the effect of it is really manifested. And consistently doing it, every time you do it, it is like that, it becomes your accuracy. So that you have to do it, you have to practice it regularly. That is how you manifest this, practicing through deliberate practice, you manifest better and better levels of quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. And why are you doing it? Set accountability to your inner. You are not doing it because you want to gain something, be powerful, become a leader somewhere of other people, etc. It is not that. It is about satisfying your inner self. Your conscience should be clear, and your inner self should always congratulate you. That accountability for yourself, goal setting, taking ownership, and having faith in that. That is the prioritization that you have to give to your mind. And ultimately, you have to do with that faith and belief, keep doing your work selflessly without looking at the results of the actions. Selfless practice. Hopefully doing things without any likes and dislikes and selfless to the core. Now, everything can be achieved through a practice of accountability, deliberate practice, and raising awareness. So it is this process of raising awareness, deliberate practice, accountability, and renunciation actually going from one way to the other. It has to infiltrate every thinking and every actions that we carry out. That is true devotion. And then you will have peace of mind. So it is practice, rote practice, followed by knowledge-based practice, followed by selfless practice, reaching a peace of mind, state of mind that is peacefulness. This is why you can see that a process is defined in verse 12. Srayohi jnanam abhyasad. Jnanat dhyanam vishishyate. And dhyanat karma balatyagas. Shanti anandaram. Peace of mind. So that process from practice to a state of inspiration is achieved through these processes of raising awareness, deliberate practice, accountability, and renunciation. In the practical terms, raising awareness involves understanding the purpose and working towards the goals. Applying quality, utility, precision, and accuracy is deliberate practice, consistently, persistently, and setting accountability. And accountability is about goal setting, taking ownership, and having faith. Faith is about having hope, positive abundant mindset, prasada bhava, with no likes and dislikes, and being selfless. So this is how the things have been built. Purpose about knowledge, having the knowledge of doing what it is, understanding what you do not know, and then trying to fill those gaps, and then achieving quality, utility, precision, and accuracy. And quality, utility, precision, and accuracy achieved through practice, consistency, persistence, and setting accountability. Accountability is set by goal setting, ownership, and having faith. Faith is about hope, no likes and dislikes, and being selfless. So that is the process. This process is basically what this verses from 8 to 11 is talking about. Mayeva mana adatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, niveshishyasi mayeva, adha urdhvam na samshayava. Fix, focus in your mind. Adachittam samadadam nashaknoshi mayistiram. Abhyasa yogena tato mamichaptum dhananjaya. Here you're talking about abhyasa yoga. If you cannot achieve that kind of a focus, then you have to practice it through abhyasa yoga. Abhyasena, through practice. And abhyasepya samattosi matkarma paramo bhava madat tamarbi karmani kurvan siddhimavapsyasi. If you are unable to practice like that, set priority and focus on the joys of the self, and that is your ultimate priority, and go ahead. If you are able to do that, then Atei tatapya shaktosi kartum madhyogamasritaha sarva karma balatyagam tatak kuryadatman, and engage selflessly in doing the karma yoga. That is it. And then in 12th, he summarizes the process as Srayohi jnanam abhyasat dhyanat dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma balatyagas tyagas shanti anandaram. So in the 12 verses, actually the whole process of bhakti is enunciated, which is basically what I have described here in modern terminology, connecting it to our brain science and things like that, and in the world of applications. When you do that, so that is it. Basically, it is about the process for tapping the power of the self through making use of the physical things that are available, neuroplasticity, to bring about sustainable change within us through raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and accountability in doing, knowing, reflecting, and sacrificing. Doing, knowing, reflecting, and sacrificing. Srayogi jnanam abhyasat, abhyasam doing, sreya knowledge knowing, srayogi jnanam abhyasa, jnanat dhyanam reflection. Reflection is much more superior to that. Jnanat dhyanam vishishyate, dhyanat karma balatyagam, sacrificing and engaging in selfless behavior. That is a procedure, doing, knowing, reflecting, and sacrificing. So rewiring of the brain through, using the factors of neuroplasticity is basically what it is all about. In fact, there is some information here about how you can make changes in the brain through novelty, increases, doing things, newer things, every day trying to do new things, trying to improve, finding better ways of doing things, increases the cell volume of your brain. In fact, that is one of the ways and means by which you can fight Alzheimer's and things like that is found out. Aerobics, oxygenation and exercises, breathing exercises, pranayama, all those things can help in producing BDNF, the brain-derived neurotropic factors, which enhances nerve growth. And intense emotion, bhakti, focused passion towards doing things can really help in actually making changes. So to create habit and to create sustainable behaviors in whatever you are doing is basically possible through these processes. And that process of doing all this is basically what Krishna described in the first 12 verses in this particular fashion. And then from 13th onwards, Krishna is now talking about uh, the characteristics of such minds. Such minds, no, not hateful, friendly, compassionate, unselfish, without pride, equal in distress and happiness, and is forgiving. Adveshta sarvabhutanam, maitra karuna evacha, nirmamo nirahankaraha, samadukka sukakshami. And then contented always, self-controlled, determined, and mind and intellect fixed on the truth. Sandushta sadadam yogi, yadatma dridadaschaya, mayarpita mano buddhir, yomal bhakta same priyaha. And then those who are never agitated by others, those who never agitate others, those who are free from happiness and distress, fear and anxieties, unperturbed. Yasmanno dvijate logo, loganno dvijate chaya, harsha bayodvegir mukto yas sachame priyaha. And then neutral, pure, expert, carefree, free from all distress, renouncer of all beginnings, never a beginner. Anapeksha sujirdaksha, udasino gadavyataha, sarvaramba parityagi, yomal bhakta same priyaha. And 17th, take pleasure and pain equally, balance of senses, never laments and desires, balance of mind, renouncing the auspicious and the inauspicious, balanced intellect. Yona hrishyati na dveshti, na shochati na kankshati, shubha parityagi, yomal bhakta same priyaha. Equal to enemy and friend, equal in honor and dishonor, equal in cold and heat, equal in happiness and distress, with equipoise, thus detached always. Sama shatrau cha mitreja, atha manapamanayoho, shitoshna sukha dukkeshu, sama sangha vivarjitaha. Then equal in defamation and repute, silent, controlled in all senses. That is what silence is all about. Satisfied with anything, having no residence, as not residing in comfort zones, and always striving to break out of comfort zones. Fixed in determination. Tulyaninda studhirmauni santushto yena kenachit aniketa sthiramatihi bhaktiman me priyo naraha. So these are the 32 sets of characteristics that Krishna talked about. Those who follow this immortal way of living, etu dharmyam idamidam amridamidam yadoktam paryupasade, described above with focus and faith. Sraddhatana mat parama bhaktaste adhiva me priyaha. Looking upon the self as the supreme goal, they are exceedingly dear to self, to me. Iti Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Bhakti Yogo Nama Tradvashodhyayaha Hari Om Tat Sat. So that is the set of characteristics which we have described this in as a kind of quadrangled, a tool that we have developed, which actually we are giving this and as a tool to our self-analytics course for the youngsters, teenagers, professionals, young teenagers, rookie professionals and all, to go through these processes with applications, and then also to try to measure their own mindset through this quad tool, which is called as, we are calling it as the inspiration quadruplex, with 1 to 32 characteristics in a cyclic order from here to the 32 characteristics are listed. And these 32 characteristics, when actually it can be plotted as a kind of graph. This is that. I will show you some examples of that graph. If you can see the screen, can you see the screen with that? This, what is given here, this is an inspired personality will be totally integrated with the inner self. The inner self, totally integrated. The black ring around the inner self is these values are of the highest order for that particular character. This is a perfect character, ideal character. May not be always like that. A totally distracted character might look like something like this. Totally distracted character at the outer ring, far away from the self, far away from the self. And an average person, every one of us would look something like this. This is how we all will look. It is somewhere here in the middle. We have to strive towards reaching this state. From this to this. From this to this. That is what Bhagavad-Gita Bhakti Yoga teaches us. To become like this. From this to this. If you are like this, first become like this. Keep improving and reach here. Keep improving and reach here. Then strive towards this inspired personality. So this tool actually gives us a picture about our own inspired state, the state of bhakta that we are in. We have this tool which which actually all these 32 characteristics, we have enumerated that 32 characteristics with their detailed description, so that you know what exactly we need to address for each one of them. All 32 characteristics are enumerated, each one of them split into 3 component elements that we can actually understand and tap. 32, all the 32 characteristics are like that. So we have gone through this with our teenagers and youth, and some of them, and definitely, they have all of them have found this to be a tool that with which they can actually start measuring what have I learned in the Bhagavad-Gita, what is the sattvic tendencies that I have developed within me, and how can I actually measure that in my own terms, and then to see myself as whether I am Arjuna like this, or I am an average personality like this, or am I good for nothing at the moment like this. Most of us will fall like this and then start becoming Arjuna. So for that, you need to have concrete set of elements within you to actually make changes within you and to measure its progress. And that is why this tool, Inspiration Quadruplex, was developed, and we are fine-tuning this further and further, and so that we actually get a better picture about ourselves, our inner transformation process through the process of bhakti, and as enunciated in the Karma Yoga, and with our faith developing as an infinite. So that is the process which we need to, the higher level process that we need to do is, we need to understand is that we have to start engaging in selfless actions by shaping our motivations, attitudes, and aptitudes, Karma Yoga, and then start to think about the self as universal, imperishable, and infinite. And then we start deriving the happiness of the self through the processes that the Bhakti Yoga is described now. So with that, I will end this discussion on chapter 12, and I will be posting these details so that you can actually start reading it and then trying to reflect on it later on. We will come back and discuss for a few minutes after we conclude this with our mantra, and then go for discussions. Anandji, do you have anything?
Yeah, whatever little I have understood, I can